Good morning. How you doing? It's a Saturday, October 26th, 7:26 in the morning. It is freezing here in Western Iowa. I think it's 27, 26 degrees. Yeah, it's cold and lots of frost on the car. Meanwhile, across the rest of the country, not a lot going on today, which is maybe good. A little bit of wind. We're looking at wind advisories for parts of southern Oregon into northern California. Up there in Montana, it's more of a high wind warning. So be warned, there will be some high winds. We have a little bit of freeze warning there, southern Nebraska into northern Kansas, just a few counties. Weird. Some fog along the Gulf Coast again this morning. And then you get up into the northeast, and we're dealing with some wind for Connecticut and Massachusetts, also southern New Jersey, with some high fire danger here and some windy conditions, kind of dry, and a freeze watch for, say, Philadelphia, down into Maryland, parts of Delaware, into New Jersey. So some of that colder air making its way east and ending the growing season for parts of the southeast. Here's the surface for today. New storm moving in the Pacific Northwest, rain and snow. We'll show you those amounts here coming up. Same thing with the Northeast as that cold air spills in and a little bit of rain and snow, and we'll show you those amounts here coming up. Meanwhile, in the Southeast, say Tennessee River Valley into the Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, some scattered showers along that front as it presses mostly east and a little bit south. Temperature anomalies today. Not terrible. For the plains, we've actually cooled off to just slightly above average. You get into the Great Lakes and east, and it's slightly below average. That includes the Ohio Valley down into Tennessee. But for most of the west, temperatures above average, maybe even quite a bit above average for some, and that we're going to change that here pretty soon. And the southeast also above average. Those highs look like this in the southeast. There's still widespread 80s here, from the eastern half of Texas all through the southeast into the mid-Atlantic, including you, Florida. But you get further west into Texas, mid-70s, very pleasant for Amarillo, Lubbock, down to Midland. Midland almost 80. 80 for Oklahoma City. But you get further north into the plains, we have a lot of 60s here, barely 60 here in Iowa, with a lot of 50s. We'll be in the 50s today, I believe, our forecast here in western Iowa, maybe 60. And then 50s, further north into North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, into the Great Lakes, lots of 50s. Into the Northeast, 50s and 40s. And for the West, on the warm side. So temperatures are warmer here. Desert Southwest, there's still some 90s down there. All right, surface for tomorrow. We see our Pacific Northwest storm moving onshore, some showers along the coast, rain mixed with snow depending on elevation into Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada. And then further to the northeast, we have that chance of light snow with some rain mixed in. And scattered showers for the southeast and mid-Atlantic continue, even though the front has pressed a little further south. Those temperatures for tomorrow, the heat starts to reinvade the plains. So as that storm in the Pacific Northwest moves in, we'll get more of a southerly flow into the middle of the country, and it's going to start to get windy and warmer, which some high fire danger perhaps for the plains starting Sunday, especially Monday and Tuesday. Mid-Atlantic, much below average for the Carolinas, and a little bit below average as you head into the Northeast. Those highs look like this. We have 60s in North Carolina, up into Virginia, even some 50s, and then 50s widespread for Pennsylvania, and that transitions into 40s for northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and again, a little bit of light snow perhaps in here. Back to 60 or so for Ohio, 50s and 60s for the Great Lakes, and temperatures moving back into the 70s for Nebraska, near 80 even for the Dakotas, 70s for Kansas. Again, those winds will be picking up too. And temperatures back into the 80s for Texas, near 90, San Antonio, Austin. And then further west, it's cooling off. Pacific Northwest, a lot of 40s here, 50s and 40s, almost 60 for Portland, Oregon, but mostly 50s from Seattle all the way down to Eugene. and further south. A little warmer in California. Here we go. Those 2-day rainfall amounts look like this. And this isn't just rain, it's some snow, and we'll show you that. But it's a lot of rain, especially for the Pacific Northwest. I mean, along the coast, over 2 inches for some, approaching even 3 inches along the coast. And also the foothills of the Cascades. You get inland, and it's quite a bit less, let's say. And, just a very little bit of rain near Paris, Texas, into Arkansas, across Tennessee, Oklahoma, West Virginia, the Carolinas, just a little bit of rain. And just a little bit of rain and snow for the Northeast. So here's how it looks for the Pacific Northwest, zooming in on those rainfall amounts. And, good 2.5 inches along the coast. And also for the foothills of the Cascades, about an inch all the way up and down the Willamette Valley, all the way up to Seattle. You get into the southern Oregon coast, we're back to 2.5 inches or so into California, maybe Eureka. But then you get into the light green, and we're talking just very small amounts, definitely under 1/10 of an inch widespread here for eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, parts of California, even into Idaho and Montana. You'd be lucky to get up to 1/2 inch, maybe for some, but mostly under 1/4 inch, even under 1/10 of an inch for some. And then some of this will fall as snow in the Pacific Northwest, but not a lot. Those snow levels pretty high, but we do see a couple bullseyes there in the Washington Cascades. You get enough elevation, you could get 10 to 12 inches of snow, but for the most part, we're talking 1/2 foot or less, and even smaller amounts for the Oregon Cascades. You get into Idaho, a smattering here of 1, 2, 3, 4 inches of snow. Same for Montana. Meanwhile, in the east, a little bit of snow coming down, but it's just like a dusting, really, for northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, up into Maine. But a little bit of snow to go with those colorful leaves, which may be past peak for you guys. We're right at peak here. In fact, I think I'm going to take the camera out to the lake this afternoon and get some fall pictures. If I do that, I'll share them with you tomorrow. If I have time to do a show tomorrow, because, I have church and all that stuff. But if I record early enough, not afraid to wake the neighbors, maybe. All right, here we go for Monday now. Now, Monday is getting warmer and windier in the plains, but behind that front and that system, just the whole western half of the country, a chance of rain or snow depending on elevation, and then showers along the Oregon-Washington coast. Maybe even some, thunderstorms here, but probably just more unsettled weather. Great Lakes also, rain, thunderstorms possible, at least showery weather. Same for the Atlantic coast of Florida, up into Georgia, South Carolina, coastal areas, and into a small part of Texas, maybe around Corpus Christi and down to South Padre Island. And then we take a look at those anomalous temperatures for Monday and really heating up in the plains. Again, windy conditions, very warm. We go from teens above average for the southern plains, 20s, 25, near 30 degrees above average as you get into Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota. We're 20 degrees above average here for Iowa, into Minnesota, and even teens above average as you get into the Great Lakes. So just very warm for the center part of the country, with some strong gusty southerly winds bringing in that heat. Slightly below average for the East Coast, although a little more below average as you get up into northern New England. And then much below average for southern Oregon, northern California, the mountains of California, Sierra Nevada, into Nevada. So that's where the coolest is as that new Pacific system moves in. Those highs in the northwest, 50s, 40s, even some 30s with elevations. A little warmer for the Central Valleys of California, 60s here. Some 70s, even 80s for Southern California, and then near 90 for Southern Arizona. Near 90 for Lubbock, Texas, 89 on Monday. Sorry about that, as those 90s are back. And then upper 80s even for Oklahoma, mid 80s for Kansas, and 70s to near 80 for, say, Omaha, but a lot of 70s here for Iowa, Nebraska, transitioning into 60s as you get into the Dakotas. But again, windy conditions too, and it's been dry. So high fire danger here. Pretty warm in the southeast, 80s transitioning to 70s as you head east, and then 60s as you head up the coast, and then 50s and 40s for New England. So not bad. All right, let's take a look at the GFS model and see what we got going on here. We're starting out the day at 12Z, so this would be an hour or two ago. And as we go through today, not a lot going on. A few rain showers for the Pacific Northwest. Some of this colder air you can see getting into New England, and some of these isobars tightening up a little bit. So breezy conditions and cold for New England. So it'll feel colder. Meanwhile, our system in the Pacific Northwest really gaining steam with, again, that heavy rain that we showed you for the next 2 days. This gets us into tonight, actually early Sunday morning now. And so Sunday looks like a rainy time of it, at least in the morning, first half of the day. For Oregon, Washington coast, a little bit of snow in the northern Cascades of Washington. And then as we get into, say, this is Sunday, and again, still cold New England, a little bit breezy, feel colder, rain mostly for the Northwest, a little bit of high elevation snow. Moving into Idaho, still see snow back in the Cascades here. This gets us into Monday morning, and now we're starting to see the wind. See how tight these isobars are. And this is going to be our big system for the west, and a big southerly flow for the plains into the Midwest, even Great Lakes. So windy and warmer as we get into Sunday and Monday. So this is Monday. And again, those strong winds and warm temperatures as our system approaches. So Utah, lots of snow here. Same for Wyoming into Colorado. So rain at the lower elevations as we get into Tuesday morning. Still windy. Heading more east, but still like windy across the South Plains and Central Plains, and then moves into the Midwest as we start to see cooler air reinvade the northern plains. And windy conditions here for New England too, warming up a little bit with some rain showers moving into New York State. This gets us into Tuesday night. Quite a bit of snow back in here. Wyoming especially, parts of Montana into North Dakota, a little bit of South Dakota back into Colorado, lingering into Utah and Nevada. So this system is making itself felt, and this is going to have an effect as we get into Halloween and then into early part of November. The pattern is changing big time. So we see a big area in the west that's cooling off, and as this system moves across the plains, and we're going to see some cooler air spill in behind that for a nice Halloween day cold front moving down the plains. So this gets us into the 30th, Wednesday, early morning. Snow across the Dakotas, back into Wyoming, lingering into Utah and Colorado. And as our low again starts to move eastward, we're going to see this colder air spill southward along the eastern slopes of the Rockies. And it's going to head straight south and a little bit east. And, will this front make it super strong all the way into West Texas? I think it'll make it into West Texas. It's not going to be super strong, but it will knock your temperatures down 10 to 15 degrees. We'll probably see more substantial cool off for the central and especially northern plains as we get into Halloween. And so this is late Halloween Eve. We see our cold front really sharpening with a line of showers and thunderstorms from Oklahoma all the way through Michigan, and another system moving into the northwest. And as we get into Halloween morning, this gets us early morning right here, and we see that front marching eastward and a little bit southward with those showers and storms along that. Colder air spilling south into the plains. Here's your 540 line. So that shows me where the coldest air is, northern plains into the upper Midwest. Meanwhile, some snow back here in Oregon and Washington. So as we get into Halloween more, this is like sunrise. And then we get into around noontime here. Our front starting to wash out a little bit down on the southern part of it, but still a line of showers and storms showing that cooler air will be behind this front, obviously. And as we get into Halloween evening now, this is actually afternoon. And the next frame is going to be trick or treat time. So rainy Oregon, Washington, with some snow in the Cascades, snow inland, and then a rain along this front. And here we go, trick or treat time. And so, maybe some storms or showers, I would say, for the eastern part of Texas into Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, maybe Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, parts of Massachusetts, maybe Connecticut into Maine. That's where you might see some showers around trick or treat time. Of course, along the coast of Oregon and Washington, rain. Willamette Valley, rain. Seattle, maybe rain. Some snow in the Cascades. So not that unusual to have rain on Halloween for the Pacific Northwest. Trust me. I spent, 13 years of my life? From when I was 8 until I was 21. So whatever the math is on that. Now, I want to go real quick forward. We were talking about a hurricane here. And the hurricane is well off the East Coast now. So if there's going to be a hurricane, the likelihood of that hitting Florida is starting to look less and less. But let me back up a little bit so you can see, as we get further in the forecast, we know there's more uncertainty. But some really interesting things with our pattern changing as we get into November. So it's like dramatic. And that's probably good if you're tired of this boring October weather. So as we get into the first, Pacific Northwest storm, this storm really taking the southern route the first week of November, kind of turns the corner in the Four Corners up into the plains, probably some severe weather ahead of that, some snow behind that around the 4th. And again, this is not an exact forecast. This is kind of, ish, what we're going to expect ish. So again, the 4th, 5th, see, widespread rain in the Midwest as this low lifts in here. Look how cold this air is spilling in behind it around the 5th. So I don't know about, again, the exact timing, but we could see a dump of some cold air first week of November into the plains and then moving into the Great Lakes and eastward. And then another little wave and then another one after that, say around the 8th until the 10th. Some very cold air, very far south. Now, again, huge grain of salt as we get this far out. But, our pattern obviously changing. So from a very warm October, our first half of November is starting to look a lot more unsettled and a lot more cold air intrusions as we go. So our 6 to 10 day temps, now this is Halloween into the 4th. So we see that big West Coast trough, much below average here. The eastern half of the country are a little more, with a very good chance of above average temperatures. Precipitation wise, looking pretty wet, center part of the country where it's been very dry. So this is very good news. And almost 100, like a 90% chance of above average precipitation for much of Texas, Oklahoma into Arkansas, and even 70 to 80% chance of above average precipitation for, again, well into the plains and the Midwest and even into the Southeast. So this looks really good. All right, recapping Halloween again. This is, we're getting closer, so this is starting to make more sense. And there's your cold front. So your Halloween cold front, temperatures slightly below average for the plains, although except for where it's slightly above average, the northern plains, and then much above average as you get into East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Southeast, and then up the East Coast, and then much below average for Oregon, Northern California, but pretty close to where we should be for a lot of the country for trick-or-treat time. And those actual temperatures look like this. So these are the highs across the country for October 31st. And, we're still looking at a lot of 80s across the Southeast and Florida, even into the mid-Atlantic. 70s, though, once you get into parts of Tennessee, into Kentucky, into the Ohio Valley, into the East Coast. But 70s for New England for Halloween. I think they'll take that. That's very comfortable. Cooler as you head into the plains. Now, there's kind of a difference between this map 1 degree below average for, say, Lubbock, Texas, Midland, Texas, compared to average. And then this shows mid 70s, which is slightly above average. So a little discrepancy here on these. I'm going to go more with this. When we have fronts this time of year, they tend to arrive earlier and have a little bit cooler air until the models learn to deal with cold air intrusions this time of year. So I'm gonna go towards this as the most likely scenario. So probably a little cooler than this for at least West Texas, Oklahoma, maybe even Kansas and Nebraska, slightly cooler than this map depicts. But it's still going to be warm southeast and east, and it's still going to be cool for the west for Halloween. All right, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Big changes coming, really to the whole country as we get into November, and it starts with a cold front on Halloween. And actually, it's already started with a big trough digging into the west, windy and warm in the plains the second half of this weekend into early next week, and then temperatures definitely falling off as we end October and head into November. All right, 21 minutes, not bad. Thanks for hanging with me. I really appreciate it. And we will update you tomorrow, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise and I make the time. And again, fall pictures, I'm going to head to the lake today and take some pictures of the fall leaves. So we'll have those pictures for you too Sunday, if not Sunday, Monday. So we'll see you soon right here on the Weather Mic. Have a great day.